Hi, I'm Dawn Montefusco, Transformational Writing Coach, and this is the healing power of words. Create with passion and write powerful stories that have impact. And today we have, from all the way on the other side of the world, at least from where I am, very special guest, Beverley Ward. She's a writer, facilitator, and coach. She writes poetry, fiction, and nonfiction, and is passionately in love with the creative and healing process of writing. She's been running writing workshops for adults and children for over 20 years and has her own writer's workshop in Sheffield, England. In 2016, her new partner died suddenly, and Beverley wrote her way through grief on a blog, which was recently published as a book. Part love story and part grief memoir, Dear Blacksmith charts her journey from the depths of sorrow to the beginnings of recovery. Writing was a key part of her healing and growth. Beverley is currently working on a romantic novel about roads less traveled and paths not taken. As a coach and facilitator, she loves to work with writers on their own journey to uncover their voices and express their truth, whether in poetry, fiction, or nonfiction. Wow, that felt so good to read. Hi, Beverley.
Hi, Dawn.
So good to have you here. Well, tell us about any recent projects or anything you're doing or you're up to right now.
Yeah, so what am I up to right now? I mean, I've just, like everybody, I was thrown, at the beginning of the pandemic. Like you said, I've just taken out my own premises. I've got a really beautiful space in Sheffield. I run a lot of writing workshops. I do one-to-one coaching, but I also do a lot of inspirational workshops for children and adults. And then COVID happened. I quickly learned how to use Zoom, and I've been doing all of that on Zoom, and actually found that it's been really wonderful time for me, because so many writers have been writing and have been wanting that support and that connection and community that I've been able to provide. But I think about halfway through, I thought, what's happened to my own writing? And I picked up my novel, which I'd left for a few years since my partner's death, and I'm back on with that now. So I'm getting up early in the morning and bashing out some words on that every morning, and I'm loving that process again.
Oh,
So
that's great that you're doing it for you. I
yeah,
mean, no one probably realizes this, but it's just like they say, like the shoemaker's shoes are never done. Us writing coaches sometimes forget to do our own writing, and we have to remember that that's part of why we're here, to be fulfilled in our own work. So that was very powerful. I'm glad that you mentioned that. So tell us a little bit about your journey writing a blog about grief that finally allowed you to break through your own blocks and barriers as a writer, and how that's enabled you to coach other writers. But first, just tell us about that first journey about the blog.
yeah. So I mean, I've been writing for 20, 30, forever. I've been writing forever, and I did an MA in creative writing when I was in my 20s, and I started a novel as part of that. I finished it, sent it to a top agent. He phoned me the next day and said, I think it could be a bestseller.
Wow.
And then it wasn't. And I mean, what I've kind of learned on my own journey is I think I've had a habit of kind of backing away from things. So,
Mm.
every time I've been on the brink of success, I've kind of gone, oh, I know, I'll stop writing and go and do something else. So I think I was a bit afraid
Yeah.
of that, whatever it was, success, or, am I good enough? All those kind of things. And then I think, I had this most amazing relationship with a wonderful soulmate of a man. We'd been friends when we were younger. We'd re-met
Oh,
after
wow.
my separation from my children's father, and he was very unconventional. He lived out on the moors, very romantic sort of story in a way, and but very eccentric. Was up all night, slept all day. He was a blacksmith. He was
Wow.
a professional single parent. We didn't know how we could make it work, and we just fell deeply in love, and it was, it felt like a redemption for me. And then
Mm.
he just dropped dead very suddenly, and only a few weeks after my mom had also just died of cancer.
Oh
So it
my gosh.
really
How
left.
did it die? Do you mind if I ask?
We don't really know. He just, I found him dead on his bed 3 days after his death. So he'd been out of
Oh,
touch for 3 days, and eventually I broke into his house. So he lived in a little hut, on the hills, and they think it was just heart disease, but they said there was no heart attack. So I've never understood really
yeah.
what happened, but obviously it was very traumatic. And I was on my own with no sort of family support, so I had to kind of go home in the middle of the night get my kids up in the morning and take them to school. And
Oh,
I just didn't know how I was going to survive really. And what I did was I reached out to somebody I'd known. I used to run a writer development organization in Sheffield in Yorkshire, and a widow had come to me once saying she wanted to make a collection of poetry about her husband who died. And I just emailed her and said, I don't know what to do. Like, she was the only person I knew who'd lost a partner at my age. And I was already feeling very out of sync with other people my age. I was like divorced. I have a child with a chronic,
yeah.
both my parents had died of cancer, and now my partner had just dropped dead while I was
Wow.
4. I felt like nobody could relate to what I was going through. And she said that she'd signed up to a writing program with an American called Megan Devine. I don't know whether you've heard of her, but she does a little thing where she sends you a writing prompt every day. So I just
What was her name again?
Megan Devine.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
excellent.
yeah, she's wonderful. And so she sent you a prompt every day. It just felt like an instinctive, this is what I'm going to have to do. And I was storing things on a blog just as a place to keep them. And then one day I just thought, oh, I'm just going to share this with a few people on Facebook, like just close friends. And then they said, oh, write some more and share some more. And then gradually I just couldn't stop. So I'd like get the kids to bed. I'd open my laptop, pour out what I was feeling. And then I just got in the habit of just shoving it online, which I'd never done before. And I felt incredibly vulnerable and frightened. And as
Wow.
soon as I'd done it, I'd be thinking, what the hell are you doing? And feeling potentially quite judged by, friends who were like, it's not appropriate. And I think probably particularly in Britain, like, we're
Yeah.
very withdrawn, I think, compared to an American culture. So it's not normal to spill your guts online.
Agreed. I was just gonna say that's a cultural thing for sure.
Yeah. But I think what started to happen was people started to email me from around the world saying, your words are healing me, and
Wow.
you're saying things that I can't say, and do you mind if I share this? And it gradually just grew, and I suppose it gave me a lot of confidence, but also gave me a purpose. That I realized I wasn't just writing for myself. I was healing and helping other people who couldn't express what they were saying. So, just as an example, I wrote a blog piece called "My Brain Has Been Blown to Pieces," and it's
Mm,
one of the things that I think people don't recognize. They think grief is about sadness, and it's not just about sadness. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't remember.
yeah.
I still see people in the street, and I don't recognize people because of the trauma.
Yes.
And somebody shared that post and said, immediately friends phoned her and said, oh my God, I had no idea it was that bad. What can I do to help? And so I just felt like I was speaking to people. And I suppose what it did for me was it took away the gatekeeper. So I'd had that kind of idea of, I need to polish things, and I need to be better, and I need to be cleverer, and who wants to hear what I've got to say? And suddenly it was like, oh, it turns out thousands of people want to hear
Yes.
got to say. And even when I've just written something in 10 minutes and I'm thinking it's not very good, and sometimes it was, and I'd look at something afterwards and go, wow, I can't believe I wrote that in 10 minutes. But
Yes.
I'm just putting it straight out there and getting a response. And after 20 years of looking for an agent, and all that, I've had three books, nearly published, but not quite. I've won awards, I've published some stories and some poems, but I've never quite had the big book deal. And
Yeah, yeah.
it just
We don't need that anymore though with self-publishing.
yeah.
That's another thing. I mean, if you're doing the marketing on your own, I mean literally I bought your book. I was like, "Oh my God, I have to read this book. This sounds like an amazing journey through grief and sadness, which is something I think a lot of us are feeling." Um but I think we have it in our heads that we're supposed to get published by the traditional publishers, and that's changing. The landscape on that is changing pretty rapidly.
Absolutely. And I mean, I deliberated about what to do with this book. It's actually published by an independent press in the end, but I
Yeah.
was on the verge of doing it myself because I thought, well, I've got an audience. I've got
Yeah.
one, but I think there was still something about I wanted it to look like a beautiful,
Yeah.
that was in the bookshops and all that sort of stuff. So I was really happy when I, found an independent press to do it. But then I had a lot of, deliberation about how to package that book, because I spoke to a
Mm.
few kind of, agent type people who kind of said, I think you should start it again and tell the story in a more traditional way. And I just didn't want to, because I'd poured my heart into it, and what other
Mhm.
people were saying is its power is in the fact that you wrote it in the moment, and that's what was
Yeah.
unusual about it, I think. And I thought, if I stepped back from it and said I'm all okay now and that's the journey, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go, no, this is how it felt at that moment.
Mhm.
because that's what had resonated with people, I think. And some of it's poetry, some of it's prose. It's, you know, it's a tangle of all kinds of things, but that's the process. And I wanted to reflect that. I think that it's not a straightforward linear journey. It's, you know, ups and downs and
Well,
forwards
that's
and
what, and grief is not linear, which I'm just learning now. Um, Mostly because of COVID, right? That, you know, on a macro scale, we're grieving, going through the 5 stages of grief. And then as I told you, my partner's dad had died, and then we had split, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, here's the other, you know, 5 stages of grief. And my therapist was like, remember, it's non-linear. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, you're going to go through all these feelings at many different times and revisit those feelings. And I mean, I don't know if I would be sane if it wasn't for writing. Like, and I'm just writing in journals. I'm not really expressing this out. You're so brave as to put it out there, because I think it's something the world does need to read more of. But
I
I
didn't feel
also,
brave. I just felt like mad. I think.
yeah,
But people say I'm brave all the time, and I'm like, am I? I don't know. I just, it was like, it was just, this is what I'm doing, and it was absolutely kind of, this is what I need to do in order to survive. That's what I felt. I felt like I don't know how other people survive that experience without that. You know,
yeah,
it was a, you know, I think I described it as a handrail in the darkness, or it's just, it was something to hold
well,
on to.
that's good.
It gave me, it just gave me a purpose, but also I was working it out all the time in that
Yeah,
writing.
yeah.
It took a very
Y-
long time.
What I love is I have a program called Create Your Dream Book, and the thing that I've finally nailed down, it's taken me a few years, to understand what my mission is. And my mission is to have people write the book that must come out, not the thing that everyone says is marketable, or to do it this way or to do it that way. And it looks different for different people. Like you said, you put poetry in there, and it was blogs, and it was in the moment. And what I just want to honor you right now, because, you know, learning these details about it, I'm like, wow, that's the mission, is to, as a writer, I feel, especially now, you know, in 2020 is the best time in all of human history to be writing. We can have an audience whenever we want one. We're also stuck inside a lot. We're not, even if we're not inside, we're not as active as we were. But you really didn't allow anything to get in the way of what you said. You just knew this is the way that it had to be.
Mm.
And you'd be surprised at how many people suppress that, right?
Oh
They
yeah,
don't.
and that's
You,
obviously that's what I, you know, come across myself, and that's, I suppose that's, you know, what I'm really enjoying coaching at the moment is helping other people to feel that they can express that, you know, I said, their truth, whatever that might be, or, you know, the book that they need to write. And I think for me, you know, I was, when I redid my website and everything, and was looking at who I am and why I do what I do, it took me a while to work out what that was. And somebody said it's permission. You know, you give people permission, and I thought that was,
yeah,
once I knew that, I was like, oh yeah, that's what I do. It's like what I, you know, believe in, is that everybody, you know, can write, and everybody should write if they feel called to write, and that, you know, whatever they want to write is okay, and it doesn't have to be like this, and it doesn't have to be like that. And
right, exactly.
everyone's got their own voice, everyone's got their own story, and everyone's got their own motivation for why they write, and I think that's all okay. So when I run workshops, I think it's not that unusual, but I think it's a bit unusual that, you know, in my workshops, you know, there are people laughing, there are people crying. Like, I tend to present tasks in a way, you know, you can take it this way, you can take it that way, just do what you like. And,
Yeah,
you know, one person will write something very, you know, autobiographical and very close to their heart. Somebody else will immediately go straight for something fictional because they feel more comfortable there, or, you know, they'll just dive back into the novel that they're writing. And I feel like it's all okay. You know, it's all okay to have all of that
yes,
room together. I don't, you know, specialize. I don't say, oh, I'm doing writing for well-being, or I'm doing writing for healing, or I'm doing creative writing. And, you know, I do teach, you know, story arcs and things like that sometimes when people ask me, but it's, for me, it's more about allowing people to play and experiment and, you know, and express whatever they need to express on that day. And it's been really interesting during the pandemic, I think, doing that, because I've been running sort of 7 workshops a week, and
wow.
with kids and with adults. And, you know, some days just thinking, what do people need today? Like, do people need to talk about it, or do people want to
Mm.
escape from it? And sort of trying to balance that. And I think that's the journey of grief as well, generally, that you confront it and then you back away from it, and you need to you know heal yourself in a different way and then dive into it again. But I think I dived into it
Yeah.
in the most extreme kind of way. It's quite unusual, I think, in grief, and it was very painful and traumatic. And I wasn't sure sometimes, like, am I hurting myself more by
Mm.
falling over everything? Because I'd written down every day, because I was a single parent. We saw each other every Saturday and every Tuesday for 8 months, and I could remember exactly what we'd done on all of those days. And I wrote them down like the day after he died, and I just thought, I'm going to record every one of those memories. So
Wow.
I did, I carried on until I'd sort of thought I've recorded everything I can remember, because I just wanted to keep it. But I think I also just wanted to live in it for longer. And, I
Oh,
felt
yeah.
people were pushing me forward, and I was like, no, I only had 8 months of this. Like, I don't want to leave it, yet.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And you had known him before, which is crazy.
Yeah, we knew each other probably when I was about 28, maybe, and he would have been in his early 30s. And a friend of ours tried to get us together, but in those days there were no phones and emails, and so
Yeah.
we just bumped into each other in a pub, or every now and then, and nothing ever happened. And then, yeah, we reconnected via that friend. Yeah, and then
Wow.
immediately kind of fell for each other, really, and we're sort of going, what were we? Paul used to say that all the time, like, what was I thinking? You know, I think, like, we were different, and I think he lacked confidence, and he thought I was a bit too clever for him, and I wasn't. I totally wasn't. He was a wonderful, creative, intelligent man. He just wasn't academically,
Right, right. Yeah, they judge themselves for that.
yeah.
You know what drew me into everyone? If you go to her website, beverleywrites.com, I love the quote that just is huge. And this is something that I love that you stand for. It says, writing helps us make sense of ourselves, to explore our hearts and minds, to better understand others, to take journeys and find freedom. I love that you use the word freedom. Can you talk into a little bit about when we do choose to finally express ourselves in writing, that there's a freedom in that?
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I feel now. I suppose that's what I think when you were saying about the barriers, it's like I've stopped apologizing for myself and stopped trying to be something else, or trying to be liked, or whatever it is. I'm just like, this is me, world. This is, take it or leave it. So I think that's a freedom. But I also think, yeah, I think there's a freedom in being authentic, and I think that's what I'm about as a writer. But also, it's an escape, I think, for me. And that's partly the book I'm writing at the moment. I have had a really difficult life in some ways. I'm very privileged in many ways, but like I said, my child had a chronic illness. Both of my parents died of cancer. I was in a terrible relationship with their father. It's hard stuff.
Yeah.
And the book I'm writing at the moment is about two people who reconnect in middle age, who nearly got together in their 20s. It's not actually about Paul and I, funnily enough, because I started writing it before I met him again. But it's about them considering, where they've been and whether they should have done things differently and all that sort of stuff. But I suppose, it's that character is longing to escape from feeling very shackled as a single parent. Like, as a
Mm.
single parent, you're at home nearly all the time. You
Yeah.
can't go anywhere, so. But and again, very similar to the experience of the lockdown, which felt to me like, well, it's not that much different really from my normal life.
Right. Yeah.
I'm ready. I know how to do this, because I know how to transport myself to another world, and I also know how to confront the world, through writing. So I think there's a freedom in being able to go wherever you want to go with your writing.
Yes.
You can travel. So I
Yes.
think there's all kinds of freedoms involved in writing. But
Do
I
you
think
think?
also people are quite sort of. I think you can see people who are still hampered. Like you feel like their wings are clipped, and you kind of want
Mm.
to go, let go. You can
Yeah.
fly. Kind of. That's what I love to see, that journey that people take,
You
where they got
emphasize
really confident.
you emphasize the importance of authenticity in
Mm,
writing and finding your voice.
yeah.
What does that mean? Finding your voice um for you, like the way that you help people really find their voice. I mean, how would a writer go about, or a wannabe writer or someone who's feeling stuck? What's your idea for doing that?
Yeah, gosh, that's an interesting question. I think what I see is, when I do workshops, I do a lot of free writing and a lot of very quick writing. So I tend to do things in like 10-minute bursts with people, and say to people, write whatever comes to mind, the first thing that comes to mind. And I think when you do that, you tend to tap into your unconscious, and things come out that surprise you, and you're like, oh, I didn't know about that. And I sometimes do little exercises where, I'll say that's, some of the things that you might find like in the artist way or something. I ask people, like, if I could, I'd write this, or if I, and quite often what people write down there is not what they thought they were writing. So they're like, oh, well, what I should be doing is writing a historical novel. And then, when it comes to it, they're like, actually, but what I really want to write is
Yeah.
about fairies, or, what I really,
Yeah, yeah.
is this really deeply personal story about my dad, and people then get sidetracked. But I think sometimes they know, when you've hit something, it's like, oh, that's it. That's the voice. And I think for me, it was about, it was a journey to just being able to express, I don't know, my true self. And I think I came from a family where I was silenced, really, I think, and it was a long journey to go, no, I can speak, I'm allowed to say what I want to say. And I don't know what you would say about how you find your voice, but I think, experimenting, trying different things. And I do think when you're at the edge of your comfort zone, that's what I felt when I was writing my blog, was I kind of felt like, oh, this is different, and I'm not in a safe place anymore. But I also
Yes.
felt I'm
Yes.
writing really powerful here, and I knew I was. But yeah, I can churn out, quite polished, well structured. I've got an academic background. I can write.
Yeah, yeah.
But this was more raw, and it was more poetic, probably, and yeah, it was different, and I felt like that's, yeah.
I think what you said earlier too fits in here, where you said that you give people permission.
Mm,
Once we have permission from just another adult who says,
mm,
yeah, you can do that,
mm,
or what about over there? Or how did that feel when you wrote that? Or then all of a sudden, I think I think I find my voice when I get permission.
mm,
I was at, and even now, though and I'm, won awards and all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And, and I went to a poetry, there's something here called the poet studio, which is like a pretty big deal. And I got in and I was terrified, of the whole thing. And then when we were reviewing some stuff, I was obviously holding back, and I felt intimidated a bit by the scholars in the room. There's only like 12 people in it. And one of the guys, older man, came over to me and he says, I'm giving you permission to go full Bukowski. And I was like, because I like Bukowski. I wasn't a huge Bukowski fan, but I liked his ability to just start late in life. He
mm,
started like in his late 30s, early 40s, and he just does some raw stuff. But with the age of the feminine, and with the whole Me Too movement and everything like that, like a lot of what Bukowski wrote would not be appropriate these days. So when he said that, it was interesting because he meant just be you, like whatever you is. And I can be gritty and sad, and there's so much stuff I was not saying, and he
mm,
could see it. This
mm.
and he was a peer, it wasn't even the teacher. And but when he gave me that permission, when he said,
Yeah,
I'm giving you permission to go full Bukowski, all of a sudden I went home and I started writing
really.
anything that really needed to come out. And I thought, wow, I had no idea I was still at a point in my life where I needed permission.
Yeah, I think we
So
all do, don't we, to some extent. But I think also you've just reminded me of myself and what
yeah.
I was, for me, what I do. So when I write alongside people all the time in workshops, and what I find myself returning to is romance. I'm a massive romantic,
Yeah.
and I kind of stepped away from it. So the first book that I wrote, where somebody said this could be a bestseller, was a romantic novel. It was kind of at the time of Bridget Jones, at the beginning of chick lit, really, and before chick lit was a thing,
Yeah.
and I should have just kept sending it out, and I could have been a best-selling author. But I backed away from it because I feel like, oh, it's not clever. Like,
Ah,
writing
yeah.
something more serious. Like, I should be writing about war and
Yeah.
politics, something pandemics. I should be writing sci-fi, fantasy. And I sit around a table with other people and think, oh, I wish I could do what they do. And that's what I see everybody's doing, like going, oh, I wish I could do what they do. And And then, I've kind of come to the position of going, do you know what I can do really well, is, best-selling chick lit, probably. Why don't I just do
Yeah.
that? So that's kind of what I've returned to. It isn't, well, it is chick lit, whatever. It's women's
Love it.
fiction. It's a romantic novel, and it's what I'm good at. And I suppose for me, I've stopped apologizing for that.
Yes.
I don't know whether it'll be a bestseller, but but the point is, I'm good at this. I enjoy it. Why should I try to twist myself into being something else because I think somebody else might think I'm more worthy if I write something a bit,
right.
It's and actually it's it goes back to that masculine tradition really, and that idea that women's stuff is not of value, or that personal lives are not important, and I think they
Mhm.
are.
No,
We're all lives,
I love what you're saying. I mean, it's just a breath of fresh air to really hear you speak about being yourself, and
Mm.
as a writer to really embrace the being yourself. Now, let's just do something a little, I mean, traditional in the sense that I know my audience loves this too, and I'm curious. So, in terms of when you finally set your sights out on, like, okay, I'm going to write this book, I'm going to finish something, whatever it is, any kind of genre, doesn't matter. You were saying you're excited, and now you're getting up a little earlier each day to write. Can you tell us a little bit about your morning routine as a writer?
Okay, my morning routine at the moment, and this is quite new to me, but it's really working, is because we've been off kilter, with
Mm-hmm.
COVID and all that. I've got kids at home. My
Yeah.
daughter's 12, my son's 9, but been having to home educate him whilst also running 7 workshops a week and coaching people. So it's been bonkers. It's really. Do you say bonkers in America?
Yes, we do.
And so I thought the only way I'm going to write here is if I get up earlier. So I set my alarm only for 8 o'clock in the morning. They sleep till 9.
Yeah.
I come down, I make myself a hot lemon and honey. I go back to my bed. I bought myself a cheap laptop because I'd had to give my nice laptop to my daughter for her schoolwork. And I'm aware not everyone can do this, but I realized I didn't want to sit at my desktop where I was working.
Right. Exactly.
So I bought a cheap laptop. I just have a Google Doc on there. I haven't even got Word on it, I don't think.
Yeah.
I take it back to bed and I write till 9, and then I get the kids up and start the rest of the day. But because I'm it's one of those books that's writing itself. It's, and I'm so into it now, that I can pick it straight up and carry straight on. And I've only been doing that for about the last 6 weeks, but I think I've written about 30,000 words in the last 6 weeks, just writing half an hour a day, really.
That's amazing. I just want everyone to hear that. It's a common question. It's one of the biggest battles I have with my clients and my students, which is consistency. And just even, I'll even say 15 minutes, we like 25 minutes, the Pomodoro technique, to 25 minutes, they say 5-minute break. And then if you want to do another 25 minutes. But truly, I'm even testing myself, and I bought a new guitar. I haven't played guitar in like 3 or 4 years. My recent ex-boyfriend was the guitar player, so I was a little intimidated. And so I bought a guitar that actually fit my body because it's the year 2020, and my guitar was like 20 years old, and so it was too big. And every night for 15 minutes, I practiced. And I know just enough chords, to get me in trouble. But I thought, oh my gosh, with 15 minutes each evening, and for me, that's in the evening because it relaxes me. And the morning is my writing time. That's more my passion. And the music is just like a release on the side. But just 15 minutes a day on something I'm obviously not very good at. And within 3 weeks, it's just incredible, the difference. And what it did is it made me remember how important that half hour a day of writing is, because I had lost track of the importance of it. And when I say important, I mean it feels good. And then you get into this rhythm, and COVID took me off my rhythm, like in a bad way. So, and what's important to you, if you could just explain, and I'm sure you have a theory or something, we all have our own, about doing it the same time each day. I mean, for you, I think it's logistically like makes more sense. But don't you think like when you do something at the same time each day, the body and mind just naturally flow into it a little bit better?
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I think that's probably true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also have a theory, that, so, I've don't know if you've ever read Dorothea Brand's book. I forgot what it's called now.
Yeah.
It's sort of strict, you know, quite, and it's like written in the 20s or something. But
Oh
she's
wow.
like, she's quite fierce, and she's suggesting 20 minutes in the morning. And at the time, I thought I can't possibly do a morning. You know, I've got kids to get to school and things. So I started saying I'm just going to do 20 minutes any time in the day.
Yeah.
But it is true that I'm less likely to do that than I am if I just get up a little bit earlier. And so yeah, I do think routine helps. And but like, especially if you're writing a novel like I am, you know, to do it every day, you've not forgotten the story. Where what I was doing, I was picking it up, like I'd have half an hour, I'd take half an hour to read where I'd got to, and then I'd be like, I've got to go now, and then it'd be another month, and I'd be like, what was I writing? You know, so I think you do really need to do that, and I think it's a, you know, it's a difficult balance for myself. Like I am really overstretched a lot of the time, and so it's really, you know, I do have to be quite compassionate towards myself and go, come on, there's a pandemic, you're dealing with all this stuff, like you don't need to beat yourself up about not writing as well. But actually, on the other hand, if you just get up half an hour earlier, maybe you can do it, you know. And it turned out I can, you know, I could fit that in alongside all the other million and one things I'm doing, and I'm really happy that I did, because like I say, I'm happier when I'm writing, and I'm depressed and frustrated if I'm not. It's a thing I need to do in the same way that people need to exercise, and you know, it's
no, it is a form of exercise. I just took the 4-day Tony Robbins virtual seminar that he offered the world, 23,000 people in 138 countries. But one of the things that he emphasized, which I think you're saying, is there's the science of achievement, which we can all do, right? We have our master's degrees or whatever, and we've done da 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 da. But the art of fulfillment, he says, is where most people lose track of, and I think writers can do that too, especially people who also teach. One of my colleagues says, don't get stuck in what we call blog head in America, and because we're thinking marketing, you know, verbiage, 3 ways to do that and 4 ways to do that, and we forget about the fulfilling part of writing. And when you're feeling fulfilled, you approach your life differently. You're happier. Or even if you're writing about sad things, you feel better. And one of the last things I want to point out, because I love that you're an advocate for this, is you're not genre specific. You really emphasize, don't put yourself in a box. Try as many genres as you can. I mean, right? Like you're not genre specific. You love to write all kinds of things.
Yeah, and I again have grappled with that, you know, because I've had agents say to me, you know, do this, stick with that, and I resist that in every aspect of my life. I don't like being put in a box. So, what I suppose what I realised in the end is that as a facilitator and a coach, it's a strength actually, because I can relate to all of it. So, you know, I write poetry. I've published a children's book. I've written a memoir. I mostly write novels, really, although they don't get published necessarily, you know, and you know, flash fiction. I write little stories on Twitter. I play with it, you know, and I write what I enjoy, and if I feel drawn to write something, yeah, I just get on with it.
Fantastic.
And I think that's fine. Yeah, I don't, you know, why not? Like,
no, I love it. And you teach so many great workshops. So Beverley, you also have a free gift for us, and I want to emphasize, she's going to tell you about an awesome free gift. Go to her website. It's on this page. Sign up for one of her workshops. Get writing with Beverley. Beverley is amazing. And what she has to offer this world is tremendous, especially at a time where I think writers need what you teach more than ever. This is like the perfect timing. But you also have a free gift as well.
I do. It's just it's a free gift. It's like a little ebook, a PDF of kind of what I think you need to know in order to be a writer. It's not nuts and bolts, how you put your commas and your full stops or your story arcs.
No.
It's more about permission, really. But it's just things I've learned from the years of working with writers. You know, I've been coaching and I've been teaching for like 20 years and for 5 or 6 years. So yeah, what I've learned on my own journey, really, and from watching other people.
Awesome.
I hope there's something useful in there for people.
Oh, I'm sure there is. And the link is on this page as well. Thank you so much, Beverley. I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate you being here and sharing your story and your inspiration and your motivation with the audience. It was really appreciated. You're fantastic.
Thank you. I've loved it. It's been great to meet you and to get involved. I hope, I look forward to listening to the interviews.
Excellent. Yay. All right. Well, you have a great day or night. I think it's evening there. Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna go and get the kids back to bed.
Have a wonderful evening, and I hope for us to do something again soon.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks a lot, Dawn.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.